What's up, everybody? It's your boy B. Scott with the Philadelphia Eagles. I just want to thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star rating. Fly, Eagles, fly.
All right, thanks for tuning in to Eagles Brawl of the Brawl Network. However you are listening, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, or whatever podcast platform you listen to, we greatly appreciate it. Conor Myles here with my co-host Jonny Page. We have an emergency pod that we had to record because the Eagles have brought back Jason Peters. If you haven't heard yet already, that was the big news that Brian Baldinger alluded to on Twitter. A lot of fans are disappointed in it. It wasn't really that exciting. I think people are at the point where they're just tired of Jason Peters, Johnny. I think the false starts and the holdings and the penalties have worn people thin, and obviously the injuries of coming off the field and not really finishing games has also rubbed people the wrong way. But for me, this is the correct move to do to bring Jason Peters back into the fold. I wanted to minimize, after Brandon Brooks went out, I wanted to minimize how much loss you have on that offensive line. I think you do that. I think the best thing about bringing Jason Peters back and announcing him as guard, because again, I've been very vocal in saying I don't think Jason Peters should play right guard. I still don't. I don't think that's the best move for a 38-year-old in his career to say, hey, play a whole different position. I don't think it's that cut and dry as people think it is. On Twitter, you can go on there, and there's people talking about moving Sam All around. There's people talking about moving Lane around. There's people talking about moving Dillard around. That's not how the NFL works. I don't understand why people think that everybody along the offensive line is interchangeable. Dillard proved that to you last year. He can't play right tackle. Completely different position. He looked awful in it. I just compare the situations and say, what's the harm in saying bringing Jason Peters back at right guard? Let him compete there. Fine, screw it. Let him compete there. But now you have that left tackle insurance if this pandemic really hindered Andre Dillard's development, which I believe it did. He's coming off a rookie season where his confidence is completely shot because the last time you really saw Andre Dillard in action was, I believe, against Seattle. I think after that, it was all she wrote. He was only in the couple. Yeah, after Seattle, you only saw him sparingly in the rest of the games. He played 12 snaps. He played 16 snaps the rest of the season after Week 12 versus Seattle. So the Eagles didn't really put him on the field unless he was serving that third offensive tackle role that they like to have that extra blocker in there. His confidence completely shot from what they did when they moved in right tackle and how he fared there against Seattle. He didn't give up any sacks, but he did give up 4 total pressures. Again, he only played 22 pass blocking snaps. They pulled him after the first half. To me, I think if Andre Dillard, after this pandemic, still looks rough, doesn't get the necessary reps that he's going to need, now you have Jason Peters, you can just slide over left tackle, and you only have one loss along your offensive line, which is Brandon Brooks, which, again, with his injuries, you're accustomed to losing the right guard now the last couple of years. So, to me, I think it's going to be the best case scenario no matter what. Like I just said, so this is like the best case scenario for the Eagles because either instead of losing Brooks and Peters along the line and Dillard and Pryor might not work out, you now minimize the loss to at least losing at least just one guy, being Brandon Brooks. Because if Peters has to go back to play left tackle, if Dillard does falter out, because to me, Johnny, I don't think this is the offseason where you can give Andre Dillard the reins. I don't think people take the pandemic into their evaluations as much as they usually do. Because we're talking about rookies and we're talking about second-year players as we normally do, and I don't think that's right. I think that's completely wrong. I think we need to take this pandemic into a serious consideration because now training camp's messed up. They're talking about getting rid of preseason. That's very valuable reps for guys like Andre Dillard, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and the Eagles' incoming rookie class, and Matt Pryor. So, to me, Jason Peters does everything about left tackle. I'm sure he can learn right guard pretty quick because he's an intelligent football player and he's been around the league forever. But he walks into that building being the best left tackle right away, and as soon as Andre Dillard shows any signs of no progress being made or any signs of regression or any signs of what he looked like last year against Seattle, they're going to pull the rope immediately like they did again in Seattle. They didn't just leave him out there on the field to die when he started to struggle. They took him off, put Big V in. So I don't think the leash is going to be that long there. They have Andre Dillard for 4 years of contract control if you pick up the 5th-year option and the franchise tag. So why rush it? I don't think Andre Dillard's ready from what he showed last year, and I don't think this offseason is going to put him in any position to be even more ready.
Yeah, really quickly, before I get into sort of some of my thoughts, over-under in some ways, Jason Peters, more games at guard next year or left tackle? Where would you put it?
More games at left tackle.
So you're of the belief that, I see a lot of people on Twitter thinking this, you're of the belief that he will be, just as you basically think he signed as a guard, but it's a way of not
It's the best,
annoying Andre Dillard.
That's the best way to coddle your first-round pick. And you don't think Jason Peters is on board with that? I'm sure he's fine playing right guard if he needs to be. But I think he knows, just as well as you and I know, just as well as anybody who watched the Eagles last year, Andre Dillard is still a questionable player. Like, there's nothing you could bank on with him immediately. Does he have great sets? Yes. Is he quick, agile, athletic? Yes. But he doesn't have the strength. And in an offseason where we had to social distance and stay away from the facilities, practice on our own, how can you trust a second-year player who struggled that much last year, who came out and questioned your coaching staff as a rookie, to properly train himself to take over this starting job during a pandemic? I just worry about that. And now you have the guy that played left tackle for you for years, who has played it at a top 7 level, even the last couple of years, and people don't want to admit that, but he has. It's just because he comes off the field and the penalties that piss people off, but he has played at a top 7 left tackle level last couple of years. How can you say, well, we'll let Dillard struggle, but we'll just keep Peters at guard, even though he's head and shoulders better than Dillard at left tackle, when you have Carson Wentz as a quarterback? The Eagles aren't going to do that. It's not going to happen.
There's so many different things here, isn't there? That it's a really interesting.
It doesn't matter about the age. I'm just trying to prove it doesn't matter about the age. It doesn't matter where he was drafted. The Eagles pulled him for Big V right when he showed signs of struggling.
Yeah, and also, does it give you a slight? Maybe I'm being unfair. Is it a little bit concerning if the Eagles bring back Jason Peters as a guard just because I've seen people saying this is a bad move because Dillard will lack confidence because he'll know he's in the huddle with JP. I mean, to an extent, does that stuff really matter? Is it just if you're not good enough, you're not good enough? If Dillard is going to be good enough, is the fact Jason Peters is playing at right guard going to make Andre Dillard tougher? If anything, Dillard's problem is he needs someone to light a spark under him. It's not technique, it's not speed, as you said, it's just toughness. He's just a bit soft. Now, what more motivation can you want than signing an all-pro and you're keeping him out of the team? So Dillard should be ultra confident. He's basically made the Eagles re-sign JP as a guard. And let's be clear, by the way, the Eagles have signed him and put next to his name, guard Jason Peters. Now, we know Jason Peters is not a guard. So they have done that deliberately. There's only one reason why they've done that. They've done that not to piss off Andre Dillard. There's no other reason why you do that, right? But even if he wasn't even going to play sort of guard, not tackle, sorry, you'd still just put he was offensive line or you'd put tackle or something. They have specifically put guard. If you go on the Philadelphia Eagles sort of press release, I'm assuming it would say we've signed guard like it is on Twitter, Jason Peters. Yeah. So they have done this not to piss off Dillard. And to an extent, I've seen people say sort of, well, it's harder on Dillard. There's more pressure on him. There's pressure on him from day one, regardless if Peters is there or not, because he's a starting left tackle. So in my opinion, if Dillard sucks and JP has to replace him, and people will say, it's because Jason Peters was putting pressure on him. Well, no, it's because he's not good enough. If Dillard's good, it's Dillard's job. I think that's safe to say. Dillard is the future, and we all know that. If Andre Dillard comes out there week 1 and plays great, he's not getting benched. If he plays bad, he's probably going to get benched. So I'm sort of struggling with what here's my thing about the move, which I was going to ask you. First question, before we even get into thinking about Peters, what's the downside? I've seen people say, what's the downside with this move? The downside is you wasted $3 million this year. There's no future contract. Yes, the Eagles have got cap room problems, but it's not cap room problems this year. It's cap room problems in future years. So what is realistically the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is what? JP sucks at guard and gets benched. Matt Pryor replaces him.
I've seen this team sign Zach Brown and then release him midseason after giving him that kind of money. I've seen them do the same with Myles Austin. It is Jason Peters. I don't know what people are looking at, my friend. Last year, I thought he played exceptionally well. That was one of his best seasons last year.
He's really good. And by the way, I looked it up. He played 75% of the snaps last year, 80% of the snaps the year before. So he's still giving you 3/4 of the snaps. Yes, he comes in and out of games. That is a problem. But guess what? Players do that a lot. You have to fit in for injury. Also, all right, full start penalties are a bit annoying. He had too many full start penalties. We all know about last year. A full start penalty is 5 yards. Is it ideal? No. Is it an absolute disaster? No. Okay. Jason Peters is really freaking good. Like, really good. And yes, he's 38. And should 38-year-olds change positions? No. How many tight ends become all-pro left tackles? Not many. Right? Jason Peters is a freak. He is a ridiculously good athlete. He's ridiculously smart at picking up things. His run blocking is still exceptionally good. Is he as good as when he was sort of 34, 35? No. But he's really, really good. Are the Eagles better with Jason Peters on the team? Yes. Do I really care where he plays? Not really. I mean, does anyone know if Matt Pryor is any good? No, we don't. Does anyone know if Andre Dillard's any good? No, we don't. So you can sign one player who can cover your bases at 2 positions. And if he gets injured, you're still starting the guys you were going to start anyway. So I'm sort of struggling here is sort of, I don't really see a negative. I think positive cases, JP's a really good guard. And positive cases, Dillard sucks and JP steps in. Because we spoke about this before. The Eagles' offense sort of relies on their offensive line to an extent. Next year, they're not going to have good receivers. That's not going to happen. They're going to have to pass protect well. And when you have Pryor and Dillard, you do have a bit of an unknown there. There's a bit of a weakness. Where I would say this is a downside, if someone said to me, Peters was playing left guard, I'd say, right, now I see a downside because now I think you're taking a good player in Sam Arlu and making him uncomfortable to replace him with a player who we don't know is comfortable. But actually, yes, but from what it's been said, from what I've read, from what I can't remember who said this, but from what I've seen of journos in the loop, they're saying he's been signed to play right guard, not left guard. And if that's the case, I can't see a downside. I would see a downside, as I said, if you said we're going to move Sam Arlu, because then I think you're messing up with the way people play the game. Jason Peters doesn't need to take any left tackle reps, really. If he has to play there mid-season, he'll be fine. He's done it for like 15 years. Dillard will still get the reps at left tackle. And by the way, Jason Peters won't be playing every day in practice, whenever that is anyway, because he probably doesn't need the reps that much. So Matt Pryor will still get backup reps. He'll be fine. Like, worst case scenario is JP sucks or gets injured. And then you're back to square one and you've wasted $3 million. And I also think, by the way, even if you wasted $3 million, I would much rather waste $3 million on a guy who is one of the team leaders when we've just lost Malcolm Jenkins, on a guy that the whole offensive line respects probably more than anyone. I mean, they call him the bodyguard for a reason. He is the most respected individual on that offense, probably outside of Wentz. You've lost Jenkins as a leader. What I'd much rather sign Jason Peters to be bad than sign insert random guard off the street for $2 million and him be bad, because you don't gain anything. Jason Peters is still valuable even if he's not starting. What was it? Your talk with who did you interview? Oh, you interviewed an Eagles offensive lineman. I'm going mad. Second episode of Eagles Brawl. Julian Vandervelde.
Julian Vandervelde.
He said he would sign Jason Peters as a coach. He said he'd pay him for him just to coach him on the sideline. This is a guy who knows the game as well as anyone. In fact, I think when you transition from a place like tight end to left tackle, you have to learn a position. You relearn a position in the NFL. You have to sort of start from scratch and relearn the intricacies of the position. There's no better person you would want in the locker room, on the team, than Jason Peters, even if he's bad. As I'm saying, I'm talking worst case scenario here. Worst case scenario is he sucks at right guard, gets injured, it doesn't work. I still don't even think you've wasted $3 million. And yes, I think the contract goes to $6 million, but that's obviously going to be with playing time guarantees. So if he doesn't play, it's pretty safe to say it's going to be a $3 million contract. We're not $3 million short of cap room this year. Who the hell cares? So I'm struggling here to think of like, what's the negative? What is the downside? And if the downside,
people think this goes to Andre Dillard.
Yeah, if he's scared, then he's not good enough. If the
Eagles aren't, look, people have an issue with saying the Eagles are they stick to these veterans a little too long. No, you know what the Eagles have an issue with? They stick to these rookies a little too long. I hope with Joe Douglas being out, Howie just goes, if Andre Dillard doesn't look good this year, we need to start thinking about left tackle again. If J.J. Arcega-Whiteside doesn't look good this year, we need to start thinking about wide receiver again. They need to stop thinking that these guys are going to continue to get better over time because it hasn't worked. Brandon Graham is an exception, not an example. So, to me, I think, because a lot of this stuff that I see on Twitter is like, oh, I thought the Eagles were trying to go young again. Why would we release Malcolm Jenkins then? Malcolm Jenkins wanted a new deal, and the Eagles thought that his better days are behind him. And the film kind of backs up their opinion to that.
And also, you're not getting Malcolm Jenkins to a 1-year deal. So if you sign Malcolm Jenkins again, you're making a commitment to future cap. That's what people talk about. When they say get young, you mean get young in the future. If you sign Jason Peters to a 1-year deal, you're not damaging you're going to talk about the cap. You haven't been able to record it yet. You've got an episode coming up soon talking specifically about the cap. When we talk about cap problems, we're talking about next year and the future, not this year. They can sign Jason Peters and fit it into their cap. So who the hell cares? Who the hell cares? Like, I'm struggling. As you said, the downside is we're getting old. That's not how the NFL works. The Eagles are competing. They are a relatively old team.
Every NFL team has age. It's a cherry pick thing because some of the Eagles' good starters, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, over 30. Like Brandon Brooks, over 30. Lane Johnson just turned 30. Jason Kelsey's over 30. Like, a lot of their depth is youth. It's not like this team is full of aging guys. A lot of their depth is youth that is going to play a lot. So that argument is just dumb to me. Getting rid of Malcolm Jenkins had nothing to do with age. They did not want to extend a player they thought was only going to continue to deteriorate. That was it. There was nothing else to that than anyone else is trying to make it. Because if they were trying to do this youth purge, they had multiple opportunities to do so. And Deshaun Jackson just gave them a card to do it. So it's not about the youth purge. They thought Malcolm Jenkins' cap number could get turned into Darius Slay, Nicole Roby-Coleman, Kayvon Wallace, Will Parks, Jalen Mills. And guess what it did? So they value quantity over quality there. They did not. It has nothing to do with age. That people need to stop that. That's not how the NFL works, like you just said. Some teams, luckily, draft well, so their younger guys fill in better at those positions. The Eagles don't draft well. So they have veteran guys who are proven talents and are playing at high levels fill in those starting positions, and that's why they are among one of the oldest teams in the league. But
yes,
here's the question I wanted to pose to you, because I think we're all focused on Jason Pierce playing left tackle. It seems like you and I are. Do you think Jason Pierce can play right guard? I think asking a 38-year-old player who is still playing one position at a very high level to completely go to another side of the offensive line and kick inside, which is a whole different technique than left tackle.
Right. Okay. So this is something where, and I'm trying to be consistent on this. I speak a lot about this, I don't believe it's easy to change positions. I've been consistent with this. That's why I give credit to Nate Gary, because I think it's hard what he's done. That's why I haven't always just said, people have always talked about putting Myles to safety and Maddox to safety. And I've always said, be careful, it's hard. I think Dillard struggled at the right side. Being totally honest, I genuinely think Jason Peters will play guard well. I really do. It's hard to explain why. Number one, I think let's not make this more difficult. It's easier to play right guard for the Eagles than it is to play left tackle. That's pretty much a guarantee. Playing left tackle is very, very difficult. You need to be a lot quicker to play left tackle. You have to be a lot quicker at your step. You have to be getting to your set very quickly. You have to deal with very, very quick edge rushers. When you play inside, most of the time you're dealing with 300-pound defensive tackles. It's a very different kind of role. Whether Jason Peters can do that or not remains to be seen. However, I've rarely seen Jason Peters get ball rushed badly. He doesn't seem like a problem player who struggles with anchor. Also, talk situation. Offensive line is heavily about communication, about relationship. Is there anyone he gets on better with than Lane Johnson? Not the way those two talk on social media. I think he's got an incredibly good relationship with Lane Johnson. I think those two will understand the way each other play. He's next to an unbelievably good centre in Jason Kelsey. As we said, they've got two of the best sort of centre and right tackle, or the best centre and right tackle combination in the league. So that right guard position is pretty enticing. Yes, he has to learn how to mirror his body and do things differently, but I don't think it's the same guard because you're not taking an outside step the same way you are playing right tackle. So, and I've also been consistent in saying, for example, I would keep Lane Johnson at right tackle. I wouldn't move him because what's the point of moving him? So personally, I think there's a good chance Jason Peters will play left tackle this year. However, I think if he's asked to play right guard, and maybe this is me being completely blind to oblivious to the facts of a 38-year-old changing position after 16 years in the NFL, there ain't many people like Jason Peters. Like, I'm fully on board with this idea that Jason Peters is a pretty much a freak. And I think even at age 38, based on his play last year, and the human body is a weird thing, if he falls off a cliff, it might not be gradual. Some people like to think of progression and regression as linear, like they go up slowly, then they slowly go down. It doesn't happen that way. Some players just go. They physically drop. There will be a day when Jason Peters walks out on that field, we'll look at him and go, oh, God, he's gone. He's gone. And you will literally see a physical decline of that. And it'll be sad when it happens because some players retire before it happens, so you don't see that. Look at Peyton Manning's last year. His arm, it's gone. His arm just went. He threw too many footballs and his arm just went. But I think, and I might be totally oblivious here, and I might be totally ignoring facts about how I'm not an offensive line coach, about how hard it is to move from left tackle to right guard. I'm sure it's not easy, but we already know he understands the lingo. I still think, and I've listened to Ross Tucker a lot in recent years, a lot of podcasts. He done a really good podcast actually the other day with Greg Cosell talking about pass protection. And Ross Tucker said more than anything else, players that he's seen around him fail, it's because of mental, not physical. They fail because they can't pick up the playbook. They can't pick up the change of protections. They can't pick up audibles. They can't pick up sort of what happens when you get a sort of double A gap pressure, when you're expecting something else and you have to adjust on the fly. So much of offensive line play, so much is not about the individual. It's about a team doing the right thing together. And I think Jason Peters will be fine in that sense. I think he'll understand what to do quickly because I think he's a dedicated guy to his profession who still says he wants to play for another 2 to 3 years. I do. This is a very, very long way of saying I think if Jason Peters, wants to play right guard, he will be a starting caliber right guard this year. Is he going to be Brandon Brooks? No, because Brandon Brooks is the best in the league at his position. But I think Jason Peters is good enough. I think he's quick enough. I think he's strong enough. I think he'll pick it up. And as I said before, if he doesn't, well, then you play Matt Pryor. And I don't think anyone who says that, again, I've seen people on Twitter, but then you're losing out on Matt Pryor's development. Matt Pryor's a 2018 6th round pick. If you get anything from Matt Pryor, sort of great. If he's a backup, great. If he has to replace Jason Peters, sort of great. I don't really care too much about Matt Pryor. I don't mean that in a horrible way. I'm not avoiding signing Jason Peters because we have to develop Matt Pryor, a 6th round pick in 2018, who's played very limited snaps. I don't really care. And maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but I am totally on board with giving Jason Peters first shout. And if he fails, then bench him. And then you leave him on the bench to be a mentor, to help. I mean, if Andre Dillard fails or Dillard gets injured, which is very possible, you stick Jason Peters back at left tackle. And so what? If Dillard's confidence is hurt, I don't really care less. I'm sort of the opinion in football, I think you are the same as me. I'm sort of the opinion that players that are good will just be good. And regardless of situations around them, they'll fight through it. There's always adversity in sports. You will always face adversity, whether that's injury, physical, mental. If Dillard is essentially not good enough to be able to handle them signing someone, then I don't think he's good enough, full stop. And by the way, that's the exact same about Carson Wentz. When people said, he might play bad because of Jalen Hurts. I don't think he'll play bad because of Jalen Hurts. He might be pissed off because of Jalen Hurts. But the idea that Wentz is going to go out there week 1 and start throwing 3 interceptions because they've signed another quarterback or drafted another quarterback, I don't buy that. Wentz looked pretty good with Foles backing him up the year after a Super Bowl win. It's not a big concern to me. If you're good enough in this league, you'll be good enough regardless of who's backing you up. So how did Jason Peters play last year knowing they drafted the 1st round pick? Perfectly fine. Why? Because he's good. He didn't go out there and think, I've got a 1st round pick on the bench who wants my position. He just went out there and played well because he's good at football. Jason Kelce didn't play badly when they drafted Isaac Seumalo, who multiple people said could easily be a centre at next level. Why? Because Jason Kelce is very, very good. In my opinion, good football players are good football players. And if Andre Dillard can't handle Jason Peters backing him up, then he's not good enough to be the Eagles franchise left tackle moving forward. So we haven't really lost much anyway.
You have to have such a tough mental mindset to play left tackle in the NFL. I mean, these edge rushers are insane insanely talented edge rushers in the NFL these days.
So are defensive tackles
I
these
think
days.
it's same with defensive tackles, absolutely.
Defensive
Anything
line
on the
wins.
D-line. Yeah, defensive line are very.
They win in the NFL. At the end of the day, defensive linemen are more athletic than offensive linemen. So if you've got to have a bit of grit about you. Like when you listen to former offensive linemen talk about what it takes to succeed, the number one thing is mentally, can you pick it up? So can you handle the protection? Can you handle all of that stuff mentally? And then it's just physical. Like, yes, technique matters. Yes, all that stuff matters. But at some point, you just got to block the guy in front of you. It doesn't matter how you do it, whether you use your elbow, you use your body, you use your arms. At some point, there's about 60 or 70 reps a game, 30 maybe in 40 in pass protection. If you're one-on-one with that guy in front of you, you just got to stop him getting past you. I don't care how you do it. Sometimes you just got to do it. And it remains to be seen if Dillard has that mentality. We'll find that out pretty quickly.
People just want Andre Dillard to start because he's a first-round pick, though. That's it. That's the only reason why people are like, hand him the reins. They drafted him in the first round. We need to see what our first-round pick can do. I get that. Like, obviously, you want to see your first-round pick right away. But nothing he did last year would make me think, especially with coronavirus, forget Jason Peters. No.
Yeah.
There's nothing in his film last year that suggests in the situation he came in because he came under injury. I thought he played. I don't want to say bad because there were spots where he looked bad, and
there were spots where he was bad. It's not.
He had some good reps against Everson Griffith and Khalil Mack, though. I will say he had some good reps.
Defensive lineman as well, though, is it's one of those positions where you can take and I see people sharing clips of Andre Dillard with all these nice blocks. You're going to win reps. No one loses every single rep. Big V doesn't lose every single rep. Like, there's a lot of players in the NFL that you can make a montage of them winning one-on-one. It's consistency. Yeah, right. Exactly. If you're a defensive end and you get one sack a game, you're unbelievable. If you win one rep and get one sack a game, you're a top 10 edge rusher. Like, it's consistency. It's doing it week in, week out, rep after rep after rep after rep. So Dillard had some good reps. He also was on his backside more than you want to see an offensive lineman end up on the floor in an entire season. That's a concern to me. It's a big concern.
He gave up 4 sacks last year and 25 hurries. Peter gave up 3 sacks last year and 21 hurries and played almost 400 snaps more pass block, almost 400 more pass blocking snaps than Andre Dillard. There's nothing that Andre Dillard did last year where I'm thinking we need to go to Andre Dillard into the season. I don't care he's picked in the first round. I don't care about that stuff anymore. The Eagles aren't a good drafting team. That's the first thing that people admit. They'll say, I want to see my first round pick play. Howie Roseman needs to be fired because he can't draft in the first round. How can you have it like that? How can you have both? Jason Peters played left tackle at a very high level last year. He continues to play left tackle at a very high level. He has not shown any. Only thing. Here's why I have my. Here's my ultimate problem with him at right guard. Does he have the talent to play right guard? Absolutely, absolutely. Jason Peters is one of the most talented offensive linemen to play the game. So that's to answer the question. Does he have the talent to play the right guard? Yes. Now his technique has lost probably 3 steps since 2016. The false starts are because he needs that extra step to handle these edge rushers nowadays. How do you, against slimmer, smaller interior defensive linemen, he's going to need that extra step. So I think that the false starts, you're basically asking them to double, because I think he needs that extra step to deal with the shiftier, like the Geno Atkins, the Aaron Donalds. I don't have to tell you, you know. There's some defensive tackles out here that are very good inside interior rushers that are slimmer and not of the prototypical edge rusher size that he's going to struggle with and need that extra step for. His technique has clearly lost a step. Does he still play well? Yes, but his technique has clearly lost a step, and that's why the penalties have picked up for him over the course of his last couple seasons. So that's why I struggle with seeing him at right guard, because you're asking him to change his technique completely, handle smaller, shiftier interior rushers, which, like you just said earlier in the episode, are getting way better nowadays. It's a tough sell for me. I think you're asking him to double his false start penalties.
I would be interested to know when Jason Peters has been injured recently, or when he's had his off-season training, whether he's ever played guard for a bit, just to give the Eagles coaching staff an insight into making this move. Or, as you've said, and I think some people have hinted, I wonder if sort of they're signing him as a guard strictly to sort of avoid controversy, but realistically, he knows there's a good chance he ends up at left tackle. And I will just say, because I know I'm going to get like tweets about this as well, like I liked Andre Dillard pre-draft, and it's not like
I
JJ
love Andre Dillard pre-draft.
Yes, I say, go and look at my tweets. I'm not saying it's not like JJ Arcega-Whiteside where I sort of think he has no hope. I think Dillard, if someone said hand on heart now, is he going to be a good player? I'd say yes, because technically he's very good. He was a first round pick who I think he's very good. There is a problem with him, and this is not a film thing. I've said it so many times, where he just wasn't tough enough last year. Like, there was a mentality thing. You could see it with him. If you go and watch the film, you could see a lack of strength and a lack of power and a sort of a lack of aggressiveness.
That Pac-12. It's that Pac-12 transition, my friend.
Yes, and that is my point, is that there's all these people saying give him a chance, and then you go into the season and Matt Pryor's bad and Andre Dillard's bad, then the Eagles aren't going to be a very good team. Like, let's be honest, we're not as good. Yes. We're quite far behind the Kansas City Chiefs here. The Eagles are in a weird situation when you have a franchise quarterback, you have Fletcher Cox, you have Jason Kelce, you have Darius Slay, you have some aging players. We are in a sort of Super Bowl or bust window. And I'm not saying that in a negative, because the odds are the Eagles aren't going to win the Super Bowl next year because there's 32 teams and one team wins it. So playing the percentages, they're not going to win it. But realistically, the Eagles are sort of Super Bowl or bust. Even like a wild card exit probably isn't good enough for them, because when you're at that stage of your sort of team building facility where you've got a quarterback in his prime and you've got your best player on defense is old, your second best player on offense, Jason Kelce, is old, your best cornerback is old, you sort of need to be competing. So you can't write off an entire year because you didn't want to piss off Andre Dillard or you didn't want to give Matt Pryor a shot to start. Like, that's right.
That's not how football works. That's not how football even works in Pop Warner.
You play to win.
They'll bench you.
Like, simple.
But here's my thing. I'm not giving up on Andre Dillard either. I just think, because I liked him a lot coming out of the draft, I'd never seen an offensive tackle in an air raid system move like Andre Dillard. Because you don't even have to be quick for an offensive tackle to succeed in air raid offense. The ball's coming out immediately. Your initial block is your only block typically in that offense. That's not what happened in the NFL, obviously, because it's going into a completely different system where you need to hold your blocks a little bit longer. And I think that's what he struggled with the most. After his initial block, he didn't have the strength to uphold the rest of the block against the edge rusher last year. And you saw, especially Jerry Hughes. Jerry Hughes in Buffalo kind of really took advantage of playing Andre Dillard, because after that, because I will say there were some reps where Andre Dillard had his initial block and he kind of like stifled Jerry Hughes to push him back a little bit. And then Jerry Hughes was trying to get them outside, inside leverage and couldn't. But then there were some reps where Jerry Hughes would just speed off the edge, and Andre Dillard, his initial block wasn't strong enough to stop to counterproduct his inside-outside leverage moves that Jerry Hughes was putting on him. And I think that's what's going to struggle with the most, especially when you're looking at a division where the Redskins just added Chase Young, where I think that's going to be your long-term matchup you're looking at is Chase Young versus Andre Dillard for years to come. You're going to need some extra strength to deal with these guys. You're going to need some extra strength to withstand your initial block. I don't think Andre Dillard's there yet. I don't think this pandemic put him in a situation to be there. I think transitioning from the Pac-12 and an air raid offense to a system, a West Coast type offense that the Eagles run, is a huge transition that can last more than 1 year. I don't understand why people just want to give this 1 year.
That's you raised a really good point earlier. Yeah, if Dillard doesn't play this year and goes on to be great for the next 7 years, he was still a great first round pick. Like, you've completely hit the idea that Dillard has to be good his second year to be a successful pick. Ideally, do you want your first round pick to be good straight away? Yeah. But if he's good in his third year onwards, was Brandon Graham a bad pick? No. I know Brandon Graham's the outlier, but he got good. And by the way, Brandon Graham's a weird player. I spoke about it so many times because he wasn't actually bad when he was young. He just had some awkward scheme changes and some bad luck, but with injuries and stuff. But basically, if a player gets really good in their third year onwards, that's still a really good pick. So the idea that he has to play this year because it's the only way he'll get better. If he plays 8 games this year, does okay, gets benched, maybe because Peters is better and learns a lot from JP off the bench, and then he's ready to start next year. Why is that a bad thing? And just one thing, because the good thing about doing an emergency pod, or the bad thing I should say, is I haven't got too much longer. So I'm trying to give you one thing really quickly. I looked at Jimmy Kempski's article on Andre Dillard for the Philly Voice, just because it's the best thing anyone's written on Dillard, in my opinion, film-wise. I sort of couldn't be bothered to do a film review on Dillard, to be honest, because this piece was so in-depth. And just really quickly, he talks about his sort of summary on Dillard. He says, it was easy to see in training camp he could move, but then he also mentions his emotional outburst and says, according to a source, That was one of multiple such emotional moments that occurred during practice last season. And then he says about how his biggest flaw by a mile was his inability to anchor against power. And he said, basically, he put a Twitter thread out that was just negative. And he said, normally we try to balance out the bad with some good, but that's hard to do for a player who was on pace to allow 27 sacks in a full season. Like, there is a narrative going around now. Dillard had like a few bad games, and it was just because he was playing right tackle, and then he got good. He wasn't good. Like, it's okay. It's okay to admit your first round pick was bad last year. When he played, he was pretty much a disaster. And the reason why we spoke about that emotional outburst before, we spoke about the fact that Kempski's referenced there many emotional outbursts last year, was I think a lot of it was mental. And if you can predict the mentality of a player changing in an off-season, then fair play, because that's not something I can see. All I can judge on is based on what he put on the film, and the film wasn't good. And I think a lot of that comes down to mentality. So I don't know if he's going to...
And I'm worried his mental hasn't changed because like we said in previous episodes, 2 months ago, he came out and he bashed Mike Leach for leaving Washington State to go to Mississippi State. He said he was a snake, and he pretty much went on radio and just destroyed him. So I don't see that mental hurdle improving.
And the Eagles have just signed a left tackle and deliberately called him a guard not to annoy him. So what does that tell you about how the Eagles think?
Exactly.
Line,
why would the Eagles not... Yes, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Why would they not say O-line Jason Peters if there was... Yes, I agree with you. I think they put... I think the Eagles ideally would love to have Dillard, Samalu, Kelsey, Peters, Lane, and everything go perfectly. But they also aren't stupid. And as they hinted in Kempski's article, the emotional outburst from Dillard, that's a concern for them. They are concerned about that. I think they're concerned about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I come multiple times in this podcast and crucified him. And
I just looked on Eagles' official website, Dave Spadaro, headline, Eagles trust Jason Peters to be the right guard for the job. Like, there is no doubt. You read the whole article, he's talking about position group. He's talking about the idea of Peters playing guard is something he's discussed. Jason Peters can play any position. That's how special he is. Blah, blah, blah. They have got every single move online here. They have said he is playing right guard. Now, you tell me why they've done that. Why not just say he's playing offensive line because the Eagles need depth at left tackle and right guard? They clearly don't want controversy on Dillard. That is clear. Just look online. They obviously
can't handle it.
Can't handle it. What does that tell you? What does that tell you?
I think minimal people are going to agree with you and I on that one, though. I don't think people are going to... I think they're going to be like, no, the Eagles really want Jason Peters at right guard.
They were talking to him anyway.
I'm sure they want Andre Dillard to play well at left tackle.
Yeah.
I just think I just think they're being as realistic as you and I are. He might not play well at left tackle, and now they they have on their roster their best left tackle now.
Yeah.
Just
also,
in case he doesn't.
They've been talking to Jason Peters for months. There's been a million journalists that have reported this for ages.
And
it didn't just happen because Brandon Brooks got hurt. Like, let's come on.
And they went about it in the most awkward way when they kept talking to Jason Peters. When they decided Jason Peters and the Philadelphia Eagles mutually decided to let him test the free agent market. Yes. Who does that? What kind of press release is that, my friend? So they have been babying Andre Dillard this whole entire offseason because of what Kempski's article says. That's what everybody in that building feels. And I will tell you right now, Joe Douglas is gone. Andre Dillard and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, I believe if you put Howie Roseman in that draft room without any influence from Joe Douglas, I don't know if those guys are the picks. I don't know for a fact. They might have went Hollywood Brown.
The good idea that was a Douglas pick because Douglas favored production a lot, and JJ was definitely a production.
No matter what. I'm just saying they needed a long-term left tackle picture, no matter what.
It was a good pick. It was the right pick.
It was a good pick. Yeah, because I thought he was going to go in the top 10. I thought he was going to go to the Bengals.
It was a good pick. I don't blame him. If he goes wrong, I don't really blame them either. If it's a mentality thing, it's hard to find that out. It's hard to find that out about players. Like, it's not an easy thing.
I'm with you. I don't know what Eagles Twitter's fascination with getting the guy on the field right away, rush him out there. Because if he doesn't look good, then the Eagles don't have a picture at left tackle without Jason Peters. Because the perception on Eagles Twitter is rolled on to left tackle. There was no need to bring Jason Peters back. That's the perception that most are leaving on. Stupid. Just stupid. Yeah, that's a stupid mentality.
And the idea that you want to get younger. Yes, you do want to get younger to save cap room. That's the reason why
you want to get younger in 2021 and in 2022.
Yes.
That has nothing to do with 2020.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if Jason Peters is 50 years old. If he plays,
my last issue on it.
It's 1 year deal. Yeah, let's go. Final thing.
My last thing on it.
Yeah.
If Andre Dillard doesn't play this year, you have 3 years left on his contract, given the 5th-year option, and then you have a 4th year if you want to throw in the franchise tag. Why are we rushing this? A 4-year, that's as long. 4 years you have left on his deal if you throw the franchise tag is as much as you have for Jalen Hurts. Why do we have to rush this? Why? I don't understand. Does this hurt Andre Dillard mentally if you delay his development? Sure. Did it hurt Brandon Graham's development and mentality when he kept bringing in Jason Babin, or when you brought in Jason Babin when he got hurt, and you still were trusting these defensive ends to play Trent Cole, Connor Barwin in a whole new system, and to still bench Brandon Graham? Did that hurt him mentally? I'm sure it freaking did. But guess what? Brandon Graham, years later, made the biggest play in Philadelphia Eagles history. Again, like I said earlier in the episode, that's an outliner. But I will say, to get Andre Dillard out there in year 2 and demand to get him out here in year 2 is doing more harm than it is developing to slowly bring him along.
Yeah,
especially during a pandemic.
Last thing I'll say on this. Number one, as you mentioned about Dillard, I really hope he succeeds. I hope he's a starting left tackle. If anything, I hope this move gives Dillard a boost. He is now the guy. Whether we think he's the guy or not, doesn't matter. The Eagles have told him, you are the guy. We've just signed the best left tackle in Eagles history, possibly one of the best left tackles in the history of the game, and we're calling him a guard. That's how much this job is yours. So if that's not motivation to go and do well, then I don't know what is. And the final thing I will say is Jason Peters is not your normal player. So when you talk about someone moving position, you talk about someone changing, don't compare Jason Peters to your average NFL player, because he tore his Achilles like 8 years ago, man. Like Brandon Brooks, I think might be done. Brandon Brooks might be done as an NFL like top guard, and he's like 8 years younger than JP. Imagine if Brandon Brooks goes on and plays at an all-pro level for the next 8 years. Like, that's what you're talking about with JP. He is a freak. So don't compare like average players to JP. That's all I'll say. And I think I'm done talking about Dillard and Peters for a little bit.
I'm about to say those are two great closing points those are arguments that I raised myself that you kind of shut me up on real quick. You're right. I can't. Jason Peters, I shouldn't doubt his transition. I am concerned, and I gave you my examples of why I'm concerned. I think they're fair reasoning, but there's no worst case scenarios for this for the Eagles. The worst case scenario is they don't have a right guard this year. That's it. That's now the worst case scenario of the Eagles bringing. They don't have a right guard. They found an Andre Dillard not ready to play left tackle. That's the worst case scenario for the Eagles. The best case is the whole entire offensive line is fortified. Andre Dillard pans out. Looks like the first round pick that they hoped that he can be. And Jason Peters plays well at right guard. And it's a Super Bowl winning offensive line. Because like you said, Jason Peters is not going to play full 16. He's going to come off the field. So if he does play right guard this year, then Matt Pryor is still going to get meaningful snaps. If he plays left tackle this year, Andre Dillard is still going to get some meaningful snaps, no matter what. So I just wanted to end it with saying, I don't understand Eagles Twitter, what your satisfaction is with rushing guys onto the field. You have, after this season, 4 years of contract control on Andre Dillard if you decide to tag him, which we all know, even after 3 years, the Eagles could work out an extension just fine. I'm not worried about it. But they have 4 years, which is the same amount as contract as you're giving Jalen Hurts and the rest of your rookie class this upcoming year. You don't need Andre Dillard to come out there and be the left tackle from day one in 2020 after a pandemic. You don't need that to happen. It doesn't mean he's a bust. There's plenty of time to work there. There's plenty of time. And we need to realize he came from a Pac-12 very rare you see many edge rushers succeed from the Pac-12 anyways, just right off the bat. One of the most recent best ones I can think of off top memory is probably Everson Griffin out of USC, and he was a 4th-round pick. I'm sure there's other guys. I'm not going to go really into it, but the Pac-12 does not have a ton of edge rushing talent. And then not only that, he's in an air raid system where it's snap, balls out, snap, balls out, snap, balls out. He didn't have to make anything past his initial block when he was at Washington State. And yes, he has great movement. He's very athletic, as Jimmy Kempski put in his article, which I completely agree with. But there is still a lot of tools and pass blocking refinement that needs to be worked on still that didn't get worked on thanks to coronavirus. So stop trying to put the pressure on Andre Dillard to rush him into the start in 2020. the Eagles have their best left tackle on the roster now, who they're hoping to play right guard, but if not, can go back to left tackle just fine and play at a great level, as Jonny and I have hit throughout this episode. I think this is the best move, and I've been advocating on it ever since we started recording this podcast. The Eagles need to bring Jason Peters back. I've been a huge advocate of that, so I'm fully on board with the move. The Eagles have there's no downside to this whatsoever. Eagles Twitter's just tired of an aging veteran that gets a lot of penalties. That's it at this point. That's all you think that they're crying about. Which, if you want to cry about that, that's fine. I want to see Carson Wentz stand upright and make passes and not get hurt, and Jason Peters gives them the best chance of doing that. So that's just me. All right, Jonny, I think we're good.
I'm with you. I thought I was done. My microphone was on mute. Sorry, kind of be a nice little pause there at the end.
Yeah, I just want to make sure you're all good there.
I agree. I agree.
All right, so thanks again, guys, for tuning in. We had to do an emergency pod real quick just to touch on this Jason Peters news and get it out there, our opinions out there real quick. I know a lot of you guys won't agree because I've seen a lot of laundry. We've been getting killed for our Andre Dillard takes, actually, to be honest with you. Because now does this Jason Peters move? Last question for you. Does this Jason Peters move affect Andre Dillard on your top 20 list now?
I think we've had the last question about 55 times. To be honest, he wasn't that high on mine, so I'd maybe bump him down one. He wasn't very high on mine.
He bumps down lower for me for sure. He might make 20 for me now because he doesn't have to play left tackle this year.
Maybe
the best case scenario is
I'll think about it today. We'll tweet it out. I'll edit mine with all I have just so people can comment and tell me I'm wrong. But yeah, no, I'll do that. I'll edit mine and see where I put him, and I'll tweet it out.
I'm interested in that. All right, guys, keep up the 5-star ratings, reviews, questions for the show. We'll answer them on air. Thanks again for tuning in. Appreciate all the support. Jason Peters is back, baby!